President Cortez for personal privilege.
Thank you, Madam President Pro Tem. Once again, members, we have a great opportunity today. Senator Fred Mills has been in the building for 16 years and in this Senate for the 13th year of his legislative career. Madam Secretary, if you would, please read the resolution.
Senator Cortez now moves for suspension of the rules to revert to Senate introduction of Senate resolutions. Senate Resolution Number 126 by Senator Cortez is a resolution to commend the Honorable Fred H. Mills, Jr. on 23 years of distinguished public service to the state of Louisiana and to express heartfelt gratitude for the kindness, compassion, intellect, humor, and statesmanship he brought to the Louisiana state capitol. Whereas Fred H. Mills, Jr. was born and raised in Breaux Bridge, Louisiana, into a family deeply rooted in faith, hard work, and public service. And whereas his father, Fred H. Mills, Sr., was the mayor of Breaux Bridge for most of the 1970s and was regarded by everyone as a man of great respectability. And whereas Fred H. Mills, Sr. was an exemplary role model for his son on how to use the great privilege of being a public servant to treat people with respect and kindness to achieve a benefit for all. And whereas Senator Mills is considered the flesh and blood replica of his immensely respected late father and is a perfect reflection of the character and integrity imparted upon him by his late mother, Mary Alice Mills, who instilled in her son the importance of responsibility, hard work, prayerfulness, and thankfulness. And whereas Senator Mills graduated from Breaux Bridge High School and the University of Louisiana at Monroe College of Pharmacy, and in 1981, at the young age of 26, opened his own pharmacy, Mills Cashway Pharmacy in Parks, Louisiana. And whereas as a licensed pharmacist, he was a pioneer in the development of pharmaceutical delivery and grew his small community pharmacy throughout all of rural St. Martin Parish long before the internet or home delivery of any commodity was considered mainstream. And whereas his hilarious commercials for Mills Cashway Pharmacy garnered him several national awards for creative advertising, but his intention was greater than just making people laugh. It was to draw people into the pharmacy so he could help them properly take their medications, manage their chronic conditions, and help improve the quality of life of the people in his community. And whereas he also served as the executive director for the Louisiana Board of Pharmacy, and during his tenure he was responsible for the complete rewrite and modernization of the Pharmacy Practice Act to better utilize the skills and expertise of the pharmacist in the patient continuum of care. And whereas during the devastating aftermath of Hurricane Katrina in 2005, Senator Mills was tapped by Governor Kathleen Babineau Blanco to be the state lead on the monumental task of managing the strategic national stockpile federal repository of antibiotics, vaccines, chemical antidotes, antitoxins, and other critical medical supplies being brought into the state, overseeing a process to reunite patients, many of whom were dispersed throughout the United States with critical medications and supplies that were lost following the catastrophic destruction of pharmacies and pharmacy records at a time before access to electronic patient records was common, and rallying the pharmacy community to continue to provide medications without payment for many months until he was able to wear down the bureaucrats at the Federal Emergency Management Agency to finally issue reimbursement. And whereas in addition to being a pharmacist, Senator Mills has been on the board of directors of Farmers Merchants Bank and Trust and has served as the president and CEO of the bank for the past 22 years. And whereas during his tenure as president and CEO, he significantly grew bank assets, expanded to 6 branches in 3 parishes, managed over 100 employees, bolstered the commercial book of business significantly, and led the bank through major technological advancements, and still today he continues to guide his employees through the rapidly changing style of banking demanded by consumers. And whereas Senator Mills began his political career in 2000, being elected to the St. Martin Parish Council, where he served until 2007. And whereas as a councilman, he not only used his expertise in the realm of healthcare and banking to better serve his community, but was immediately indoctrinated into the daily struggles of people regarding roads, bridges, sewer, water, drainage, flooding, schools, taxes, and so many other issues that would shape his entire political career. And whereas in 2007, he was elected to represent the people of Louisiana, House of Representatives, District Number 46, and was immediately recognized for his captivating ability as a freshman legislator to tackle hard issues head-on while remaining respectful of both sides of the debate. And whereas in 2011, he was elected to represent the people of Iberia, Lafayette, St. Landry, and the St. Martin parishes when the seat for Louisiana Senate District Number 22 was vacated, and quickly established himself as an exceptional resource on the Senate Committee on Health and Welfare and the Senate Committee on Finance. And whereas he was re-elected without opposition in 2015 and was appointed by Senate President John Alario to serve as the chairman of the Senate Committee on Health and Welfare during the 2016 to 2020 term, overseeing the physical, behavioral, and social health care policy and legislative directives governing the residents of Louisiana. And whereas Senator Mills was reelected again without opposition in 2019, and in January 2020, Senate President Patrick Page Cortez reappointed him to continue serving as chairman of the Senate Committee on Health and Welfare, and also appointed him as Senate parliamentarian. And whereas in addition to serving at one time on nearly every Senate standing committee, Senator Mills has served on numerous public and private boards and commissions, including the Acadian Ambulance Board of Directors for over 15 years, the St. Martin Economic Development Authority for over 30 years as a founding member and current president and CEO, and the Board of Directors for the St. Martin Parish Hospital Service District for over 40 years. And whereas during his tenure as a state legislator, he has authored significant legislation impacting the areas of healthcare, human service districts, safe drinking water, local sewerage systems, behavioral health care, access to physical therapy, medical marijuana, pharmacy benefit managers, Medicaid, managed care, taxation, professional and occupational health licensing boards, and the opioid crisis, to name just a few. And whereas during his time as state legislator, he helped the residents of the state recover not only from the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, but also from many other hurricanes, floods, and natural man-made disasters to have befallen the state. And whereas despite the optimism of the new term and new decade that was starting in 2020, Senator Mills, like the rest of the world, was thrown into the global COVID-19 pandemic, and whereas he worked tirelessly to help the people of his district and this state access state and federal resources available to cope with the abrupt and unprecedented disruption of life as it was known prior to March 2020. And whereas in addition to the turmoil COVID-19 caused at his pharmacy and bank that demanded his attention, he never hesitated to tap every resource available to help his constituents in need, much like he always has based on the example set by his father. And whereas Senator Mills has always approached his responsibility as a public servant in a way that exemplifies the goodness of government and all that can be accomplished to help people, as opposed to the volatility of politics, which, if left unchecked, can be hurtful and divisive. As whereas he has always been a man of the people, committed to the people, treating everyone who approached him as a friend with the same respect, no matter how big or small their voices were. And whereas his legislative assistant, Ms. Yvette Gregg, has been his trusted assistant and voice of compassion since he was first elected to public office in 2000, and whereas he often uses humor to diffuse tense situations in meetings or committee hearings, but he has never disregarded or minimized the positions of people who meet with him or testify before his committee. And whereas Senator Mills is the most humble of politicians, a true gentleman and statesman who has set the bar extremely high for those who follow in his footsteps. And whereas his wisdom, decorum, and ability to be a steadfast legislative leader will be sorely missed by every legislator who has had the honor of serving with him, by all of the staff who had the privilege of working with him, by all of the lobbyists who have been able to rely on him, by the residents of the state who have benefited from his heroic efforts on their behalf, and most importantly by the people of Senate District 22 who have had the most loyal of champions fighting on their behalf. And whereas although Senator Mills has reached the end of his final term in the Louisiana legislature, there is no doubt that whatever lies ahead for him in the next chapter of his life, he will continue to be profoundly impactful on those around him, because that is simply the kind of man that he is and always will be, even without a political title to his name. And therefore be it resolved that the Senate of the Legislature of Louisiana does hereby commend and congratulate the Honorable Fred H. Mills, Jr. on 23 years of distinguished public service to the state of Louisiana. Be it further resolved that the Senate of the Legislature of Louisiana does hereby express heartfelt gratitude to Senator Mills for setting a standard of character and integrity founded on kindness, compassion, intellect, humor, and statesmanship that everyone who walks the halls of this great capital should emulate. Be it further resolved that the Senate of the Legislature of Louisiana does hereby extend to Senator Mills the most sincere wishes for many years of success and happiness in all of his future endeavors.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Madam Pro Tem, I move adoption of the resolution.
Without objection.
And I'd also move that all senators be named co-authors on the resolution.
Without objection.
Thank you. Okay, so I guess I'm not going to speak too long on Freddie Mills, Senator Mills. You all know that he and I came to the legislature 16 years ago together. He, quite frankly, was one of the reasons I ran. He was already in a race in St. Martin Parish, and I started thinking, I've always wanted to do public service. And so I called him and I said, what do you think? He said, you got no problems. You done coached every kid in Little League football over there. You know everybody. And I was like, well, okay, what's it going to take? He said, well, you're going to have to work hard. I'm going door to door and all this stuff. So fast forward 16 years later, he says, can you believe we went door to door to do this? I said, you're kind of right about that. He said, but we were young back then. And so he got to be my seatmate in the house, and we sat next to each other every day. And he would tell stories. Now, y'all probably don't know this, but he was a very, very good basketball player growing up. What? He told me that one time in 8th grade he was playing, and the coach said, Fred, come here. And he thought, I'm going in. He took off his pants. He got to the coach. Coach says, can you go get me some popcorn? But he always used humor, and he was very serious at times, but then he told me he had the great opportunity to meet people, whether it was through the pharmacy or through his service. And so he got to be real good friends with Shaquille O'Neal. When Shaquille was playing at LSU, he would go by and visit. As many of you know, there were players from Cecilia right there in his neck of the woods that got to be friends with that he knew. And so he would come by the pharmacy. And so when Freddie ran in the special election, a little known fact, when he ran the special election for the Senate, Shaquille O'Neal was with the Lakers, I think, at the time. He made a robocall for Freddie Mills. Now, when you can get Shaquille O'Neal to stop playing basketball and make a robocall for you, that's a pretty good deal. So we spent a lot of time together, and I will tell you that humor is a great healing agent. And so he told me one time he was meeting with James Baker, who was on the Ronald Reagan staff. I hope I'm not telling the stories you were going to tell, Fred. I'm sorry. I know you so well, I could probably give it. So he said that at every staff meeting, President Reagan would say, before we all start, he would go down all of his chiefs and everybody that was on there and say, y'all got a 15 to 30 second joke. You got to go tell a joke. And they would tell a joke all the way around the table. And I guess, I don't know if he told you this, but Freddie deduced that if you can't laugh, then you can't really accomplish much. So Fred can make us laugh, but he's also serious. And he's going to come up here, and I think the official time clock, Senator Peacock, is ready to hit the button when you get up here. But y'all welcome my dear friend, Senator Fred Mills.
Thank you. Well, before I get started, now that he's got me wound up with a basketball story, I want him standing right here. I told this story before. I was the worst basketball player at Breaux Bridge High School. They never washed my jersey for 4 years. I was so bad. I was horrible. And my wife, Deb, knows that. She sees me play. She said, you can't shoot. So long story made short, the coach said, if you don't play football, you can start. So I said, you know what? And Coach Pope, I went all the way. So we play in Acadiana High, and I get to start. The ball goes up in the air, gets hit, goes out of bounds. The clock never moved. The coach took me out the game. He patted me on the butt, He said, good game. I said, good game? He said, I told you you'd start. I didn't tell you how long you're going to play. So before we get started, I'm not going to go into a big ordeal with this man because we go back longer. But let's give him a big round of applause for the love he's given us. He did take my opening of my speech with Ronald Reagan. He actually took the opening of my speech. I just want to tell you, I rented these clothes at Pellerin's Funeral Home in Brobridge, and I got to bring them back for 7 o'clock. And you know the funeral home clothes are cut in the back, so Yolanda enjoyed this speech. Y'all, I want to just let you know something. The things just stick with you that you'll never forget. For me, what I'll never ever forget was the first grade with my first grade teacher, Miss Guidry. And what Miss Guidry would do is every Monday, she had a big chair, and you had to go, if you wanted, you went and you said what you did for the weekend, who did you meet, and what did you learn? And when I'd get up on that big chair, she'd have to say, T. Fred, you need to go sit down. Somebody hasn't. I'd go, I went to the LSU game. I saw Mike the Tiger. I saw the band. I learned. So what I want to do, this speech is a little bit different. I want to talk about the people I've met along the way and what did I learn. And I still learn, but I don't always do it. But I wanted to just talk about what I learned. So the first part, I hope you just sit back. We're going to visit. And the speech is kind of like just the funny part of constituent services. And anyone could make this speech up here. Anyone could make this speech of just the humor of your constituents. And my wife, Deb, knows because she gets so many of those calls, and I'm going to talk about her a little bit later. I'm going to talk about a lot of y'all. But I guess what I want to say is my very first day on the job, I was a state rep. And I was so excited. And you know, on that first day, you just got so much adrenaline and you're so pumped up. So I get this lady, and she calls me up. And I'm not going to say the real names because this story is all real. She calls me up, and she says, T. Fred, this is Clotilde. I said, hey, Clotilde, how you doing? She said, I'm in love with my man, Bob. And she said, Bob is in jail in Monroe, Louisiana, and I live in St. Martinville. And I can't go see Bob because that takes too much of my time. Can you move Bob from Monroe to St. Martinville? I said, well, I don't know if I can do that. I said, can I do that? So I called at the time. Sally was the assistant. Yvette came later. So Sally was Sidney Mae Durant. A lot of y'all know Sidney Mae Durant. So I said, can I move a prisoner? She said, oh, yeah. She said, you just move one from Monroe and one to St. Martinville and you're good. So I called Clotilde back. I said, you really love this man? She said, this man is my life. She said, I love this man more than anything in my world. I love this man. I moved him. Bob's in St. Martinville. I get a call 2 weeks later from Bob. Bob says, T. Fred, why you move me? I said, well, Bob, Clotilde, what? I broke up with Clotilde 2 months ago. I got a girlfriend in Monroe. I had to move him back. Now, why do I tell you that? What I did learn immediately, there's two sides to a story. I just did not. I really had to learn that, and I'm still trying to think there's two sides to a story. So I get a call 2 or 3 days later. Y'all ain't gonna believe this one. You're just not gonna believe this story. I get a call 2 or 3 days later, and I'm just pumped up. It's, you know, I'm a state rep. I'm just pumped up. So this lady calls me up. She says, now, how many of y'all down here on this floor, when you're running for office, if somebody has a yard sign that's against you, you might have a chance to get their vote. But if they got a 4x8 sheet of plywood, they're not voting for you. Don't stop at their house. So this lady calls me up and she says, I'm telling you what, when you run for re-election, I'm putting a 4x8 sheet of plywood in my yard against you. I said, ma'am, I just won for election a week ago. What did I do? She said, you ruined my cigarettes. I said, I ruined your cigarettes? She said, T. Fred, you ruined my cigarettes. So I called Sally once again. I said, Sally, did the legislature pass something about cigarettes? She said, yeah. She says there were so many fires at homes of people smoking while they were sleeping. At that time, Louisiana had a self-extinguishing cigarette. After a minute of not smoking, it went out. Didn't think that was a big deal. So I called the lady back. I said, it's T. Fred. I said, listen, let's talk about your cigarette. She said, yeah, let's talk about it. I said, why can't you smoke a cigarette within a minute? She said, well, I got emphysema. So what I do is I smoke my cigarette, and then I take my walker with my tennis balls, and I go with my tennis balls into the other room, and I turn my oxygen on, and I take my breathing, and then I take my treatment. We're going to improve healthcare in Louisiana. So I said, well, I know your husband, he smokes. She said, yeah, he's a good smoker. I said, how's his lungs? She said, his lungs are really, really good. I said, well, why don't you, while you go, y'all are retired. She said, yeah, we're retired. I said, well, while you getting your oxygen treatment, why didn't he smoke your cigarette? And when you come back, the cigarette's good. She called me up. She said, I tell you what, me and my husband are more together than ever. We love each other so much. We've never had so much time. When you run for re-election, I'm going to have 2 4x8 signs in my yard for you. So then fast forward, we go to a Christmas party a few years later, and this man sees me and he says, listen, you need to come to my house. He said, I got a problem in my house that's very important. Oh, what I learned from the smoker, there's always a solution to something. If we work hard enough, we can solve everything if we work hard enough. So I did learn that there's a solution to everything. So this guy tells me, he says, you need to come to my house because I have a real problem and only you can solve it. So in South Louisiana, we have a lot of rural roads, and Brent Island, Senate Island knows that the sugarcane carts pass on those rural roads and have a lot of weight on those carts. So I go to his house. He says, now listen, it's sugarcane season. Those tractors are going down the road. Watch what's going to happen. So the sugarcane cart hits the pothole. He says, now come in the back. So he brings me in his bathroom. I said, what's this about? He said, every time the sugarcane cart hits the pothole, the toilet water comes out the bowl. He said, what do you call that? I said, I call that a bidet. I'm not sure what I'm going to call it. So he said, well, Mr. Senator, what you going to do to solve this problem? I said, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Walmart. I'm going to get y'all a foghorn. And if one of your family members on the pot, when they come in, you just blow the foghorn until I can get the transportation department to come put some asphalt on the road. What I really learned from that, every one of our constituents' problems, to them, it's a huge problem. It is a huge problem. And it really taught me not to discount any call that I get. So then fast forward, it's Holy Week. It was maybe 5-6 years ago. It's Holy Week for the Catholic Church. And the Catholics, during Holy Week, we kind of do express confessions. You know, during Holy Week, you get 5 or 6 priests at the church, and you do a kind of express confession. So it's Holy Thursday, and I'm sitting there, and I said, you know, I think I'm going to go to confession. So I go in the back, and it's the regular confessional with the little slit, and the priest does, bless me, Father, if I have sinned. And there's about 10 ladies in the back come in. They all have their headpiece on, and they're doing their rosary. And I get back there, and there's this priest that I know a lot of people back there are going to start laughing. Father Poussin. You have to know Father Poussin. He was a character. So the little slit opens. I did, bless me, Father, if I have sinned. He goes, T. Fred, that's you? I said, yeah. He said, come in the back. So I had to go in the back, and all those ladies said, boy, my T. Fred sinned a lot. The priest brought him in the back. So I go in the back. He said, tell me your sins. So I told him, he said, 3 Hail Marys. I said, really? He said, yeah, 3 Hail Marys. He said, but I got a problem. He said, you know where my camp is in Butte La Rose? He said, you think you could put Father a little limestone right by the driveway? You could get Department of Transportation to bring some limestone. I said, like on your driveway? He said, yeah. I said, well, wait, I got to figure this out. It's Holy Week. I want to go to communion. There's 3 Hail Marys and the limestone, or 3 Hail Marys or the limestone. We always got to negotiate. We got to negotiate. So I get here, and I will never forget, my very, very first bill was in the House, and it was extremely controversial. It was the oil and gas industry against the wild crawfish farmers in the Chaffalaya Basin. Very volatile issue. So it's my first bill. I'm charged up, and I'm going in front of Natural Resources, and Senator Troy Hebert, how many of y'all remember Senator Troy Hebert? He calls me up, and he says, T. Fred, you're going to have some problems with the oil and gas people. He said, I'm coming to help you. Well, we do what we got to do. We make our presentation. And he said, let me close. I said, that would help me. And y'all know from y'all serving with Troy. Senator Barrow, y'all know him. So he starts talking about the wild crawfish farmers, and he didn't even read the bill. He's making stuff up. He's making stuff, and he's crying. He's crying. The tears are flowing down. And he always taught me a secret I'm going to teach y'all. He said, when you're closing, you rub the wood on the chair, on the table. Just rub the wood like, it's very, and the tears are flowing. So I held the mic. I said, Troy, you okay? You that passionate about wild-caught crawfish? He said, no, T. Fred. He said, they pay an actor millions of dollars for these tears. Let me keep going. But he said something in the closing that I really feel is each and every one of you. He said, and we love the oil and gas industry. He said, the oil and gas boys, they got their lobbyists. They got their money. And he said, they got their Mercedes. They got everything. He said, but all they got today is T. Fred. That's all they got. He said, all they got, and from here on in, all we got is the little man and the little woman. They just need us. And ever since he told me that, it made me think, the little man needs us. I love big industry. I love big oil. I love the chemicals industry, lobby. They all have a purpose. But he really taught me, let's never, ever forget about the little man. And that really touched me, the little man. So now I'm going to get a little bit more serious, and I get a call. And it was last year. I get a call from a dear friend of mine. And she says, my mom passed away. My dad would like to do something really, really, really special. We're mourning, we're grieving, but we'd like to do something special. I said, what would you like to do? I said, well, we'd like to give everything she's got, from durable medical equipment to wheelchairs to books to clothes. And Mr. John Orbo's here, and he'd meet me. He'd meet me all the time. He'd bring me crates and crates of stuff. I mean, just wonderful memories. And I thought to myself, here they just buried his wife, Miss Evelyn Orbo, of many, many years. And they put themselves last for other people that need it. And that person that called me was Christine Peck. Y'all all know Christine. I want to thank y'all. I want to thank y'all for what y'all did. I want to thank y'all. Well, now my wife. I want to let you know about my wife. I would say there's no one in here that is married in this building to a woman that won the grand prize on Wheel of Fortune. She won the grand prize at Wheel of Fortune. Deb, stand up. Debbie Mills, my wife. So when her show was on Friday. True story, y'all. When we went to church at St. Joseph Church on Sunday, not one person went talk to the priest after Mass. He kept wondering, nobody's talking to me. They were standing in line. How's Vanna? How's Pat Sajak? How's the wheel? It's hard to turn the wheel. She was just overwhelmed with people. I mean, she could have found a cure for some disease. She was on the Wheel of Fortune. She was on the Wheel of Fortune. So I want to tell, and this story kind of intertwines a little bit. It intertwines. But in the wonderful resolution, it was read about the Strategic National Stockpile. And my wife was the queen of the Strategic National Stockpile, and she holds a record for working in there. And I want to tell y'all a few stories because we all have a Katrina story, and this is just, I'll never forget it. I'm going to mention a few of those folks back here. And I do want you to know, we had a pre-party, so all of my friends here, I thanked them upstairs on the 17th floor. So I wanted to do that because I cried like a dog, and I didn't want to do that up here. But I will thank my friends in a little while. So two stories. Deb was working for the Strategic National Stockpile and the LDH, and they told her if something ever came out, there was a tragedy, you would be deployed. So she said, well, if I'm deployed, you come in with me. I said, I'm coming. Well, Katrina hits, and she's deployed. And so we go on Blue Bonnet, we go to the Jimmy Swaggart place, and Deb and I are the only two people. They had evacuated everybody, all of the people that were trained. We sitting at the desk, the levees had just broke, and every call we're getting is, I need 20,000 body bags. I need this, I need this, I need this. And a funny story that now I can laugh at, I'm picking up the phone. I'm just volunteering. You can't fire a man when he's working for free. You don't fire a man. So I'll pick up the phone. Lo and behold, and Allison's here with Acadian. I get a call from Richard Zuschlag with Acadian. They were actually shooting. People were shooting at the ambulances. Not sure who they were, but they're shooting. When he picks up the phone and he realizes I am in charge, T. Fred's in charge, he said, who am I speaking to? I said, Fred Mills. He went, the state is coming to an end. I need some help. So we ended up solving it. But the story I wanted to say is, and it intertwines a lot of people. It intertwines Dr. Jimmy Guidry with LDH, Dr. Roseanne Prats with LDH, Christine Peck was at LDH at the time, Tina Stefanski was at LDH at the time, still at LDH, Carol Broussard. We formed a bond of all us working together. It's unbelievable. But this is a story I just have to tell you about people. And I'm going to mention some more people, but this is unbelievable. Charity Hospital was shut down. There was no health. There was surgery in the middle of open heart surgeries. People evacuated. On the floor of the Assembly Center, we realized we turned it into an emergency room, a huge emergency room, and they were doing construction at the Assembly Center. So we had mops and we were cleaning up and waiting. All of a sudden, these black helicopters start coming in. And the team of people I'm talking about did what they needed to do. And that night, that floor was turned into an emergency room. I called my dear friend, Dr. Warren Degater, and I said, can you get some doctors there? So he gets doctors there. They're actually doing surgery on the floor of the PMAC. And it was unbelievable. They tell my wife and I, can you go set up a morgue? We set up a morgue that night. All the people back there in healthcare, my friends Burton Dupuy, and I'm going to mention some, Karen McFall, all of y'all, the goodness of people, the goodness of government, the goodness, what I learned in that moment was that people are good, government is good. Don't let anybody convince us that we're not doing good work and we're not doing good things. I could talk for hours on that, and I'm not, but then I want to just talk about two more things, then I'm going to conclude this. I will never forget this as long as I live. I'm kind of the shopper in the house a little bit. I'm not a good shopper. My wife will tell you, I just go get the staples. I'll get milk bread, and I'm good. And so I'm shopping at this little place in Lafayette. It's called Champagne's. It's in the All Center. And all of a sudden, I see Carmen Blanco, Governor Blanco's daughter. And she runs to me and she hugs me and she's crying. And Governor Blanco was on her deathbed. So I'm crying too, and we realized, I said, I'm so sorry the governor passed away. She said, no. She's gonna pass away. But today, medical marijuana was legalized, and Mama said, what the heck? Let's go get some. She could not get out of bed. She was on hydrocodone. And this was in all the newspaper articles, so I'm not divulging anything more. And she told me I could always say this story. So she said, and Governor Blanco said, let's try it. They gave her the first few doses of medical marijuana. This was on a Monday. On Saturday, they were playing cards with her, and they had their mama back for about 3 weeks. And she told me, she said, we want to thank you, and I want to thank the legislature, because there was some tough votes to do that. And there was, when I presented that bill, I'll never forget this as long as I live. On this side of the room, and I see some of my friends here, Senator Clayton, Senator Chabert, this side of the room was full of DAs and judges and saying, this is going to be the worst thing that ever hit Louisiana. Here was epileptics and families saying, we've tried everything. Can we please get one chance? And in my closing, I will never forget that as long as I live. While I was going on, a young child had an epileptic seizure. And I can remember saying, I love y'all judges, I love you sheriffs, but that's for that little boy having a seizure right there. And we passed it. And I just thought that was so remarkable. And I want to tell you all, sometimes the works and the fruits you put in, it does take a while for the crop to germinate. And that crop germinated several years later. This is my last story, and I'm going to conclude, but this is the story I just will never forget. I get a call from Sheriff Theriault in St. Martin Parish. And he says, Fred, I don't know these people too well, but they tell me that they have to. get their special needs daughter into Tulane. She's in a coma and she needs to be in Tulane Hospital because that's the only specialty care she can get. So lo and behold, our paths all crossed at LDH, and we made the calls, and we got, this was during Mardi Gras. It was around Mardi Gras. And we get this child into Tulane. Never met the family. Talked to him on the phone a lot of times. Easter Sunday, my phone rings, and that man is crying. I thought his daughter died. I said, I'm so sorry. He said, no, my daughter opened her eyes. My daughter's out of her coma. It's amazing the constituent service work we can do that makes a difference. That's to me what this job is about, is the constituent services. We can come here and do policy all day long, but isn't it a remarkable thing to be able to do constituent services? It is, isn't it? Isn't it? So I'll leave you on these few notes, and I'll finish from here. It is to see each and every one of you, all 37, and my friend back there, 38. It's remarkable, because when I was sworn in with Jonathan Perry, bless you, Johnny. Get a 340B drug is going to help you. So when I got sworn in, when I did my very first bill, I look up and all 37 people are gone. Ed Murray was here, Robert Adley was here, Mike Michaud was here, Dan Clater was here, Joe McPherson was here. Not one person was here when I made my first bill. And this place hasn't missed a beat. It has wonderful leadership. This freshman class is unbelievable. The second year class is going to be fine. The machine moves on. The machine moves on. So I want to tell you two kind of little religious things, and then I'm going to conclude. But I love the prayer of Mother Teresa, and I think we should all live by it. I think it's one of the best prayers I've ever heard. It's her mission statement. It's called The Simple Path. She basically says on The Simple Path that the path of silence leads to prayer. The path of prayer leads to faith. The path of faith leads to love. And love leads to peace. So when you think about it, that's you. You all do it. You thoughtful. We pray. We have faith. We have a lot of faith. We have a lot of love. And I think you should have peace in your heart. So I'm going to leave you on this last thing. I heard Father Mike Schmidt. If you want to hear a podcast, I don't know why I brought this. I didn't look at it. If you ever heard Father Mike Schmidt, he says something that I think is unbelievable. He has a podcast, Catholic priest. He's fabulous. He said, good times, as good as they are, don't last. Bad times, as bad as they are, don't last. What Paul says in the Bible, 3 things last: hope, faith, and love. So I'm going to end on this note. On faith, I have faith in you. We have faith in God. The hope I have is that we continue to do good work. So I'd like all 37 of you to stand up so we can all give you a round of applause, because our hope is in you. Please stand up. Thank you. The love I have is for all of you. But let me start with the folks back there. Each and every one of y'all, I adore you. I love you. I just love you all so much. And I could go over each one of you, from the Bank family to my family, to Hank and his kids, to Gloria and Brian and their kids, to my wife and the wonderful family and the wonderful adventures we've had. To, I don't call them the Senate staff, it's the Senate team. We all work together. To the drugstore family, to the hospital family, to the bank family, to all the family. Everything you heard in that resolution, I did it because of you. I did it with you. I couldn't have done these things without my wife, my family, my team, my staff. There's not one thing I did alone. We did it all together. So would you just let my friends stand up and let's love them. Please, all of y'all back there, stand up. Now, I got to tell you, with all of them here, Golden Corral's buffet didn't have much ribs eaten today, because that's usually what we do on Thursdays. We go to the all-you-can-eat ribs buffet. And I want to make sure I thank this crew right here. I'm going to miss them. Every time I would stand up to do a bill, I talked to them about the Bold and the Beautiful soap opera. I love the Bold and the Beautiful soap opera. I'm a man of simple taste. If y'all can't find me from 12:30 to 1, I'm watching the Bold and the Beautiful soap opera. I don't go to anything from 12:30 to 1. I'm not missing my soap opera. So every time before I have a bill, I look at the girls, the ladies, and I say, what's going on today on the soap opera? And the secretary is there. Would you go and sit down? I don't want to hear this. So I just wanted to thank y'all. Well, I hear Miss Guidry, and Miss Guidry saying, T. Fred, you talk too long. I love y'all. Thank you. Thank y'all.